Hello and welcome to the second episode of Adam Hates Movies, a smaller cast than the first episode alongside Jesse Wozniak and Ray Rivera. My name is Adam Zaki. Just to refresh your memories in the first part of this two-part series, we spoke about movies, my dislike for them, and my friends' like for them. We talked about the concept of movies and their value in society and what they bring to individuals who enjoy them and, what you can get out of them that's more than just entertainment. We had a really good conversation. We went almost an hour last time. And so I watched three movies since our last episode. Those three movies being The Departed, The Shining, and Goodfellas. And so we're going to discuss those movies that I watched into detail and see if my opinions about the concept of movies in general have changed. So I'll throw you two in. Jesse, did you rewatch any of these movies?
I actually watched Goodfellas over again, but I did not watch The Departed or The Shining. But I watched The Shining about 3 or 4 months ago, so it's fresh in my mind somewhat.
Ray, did you watch any of these movies again?
I rewatched The Departed a few days ago, and I have not watched Goodfellas or The Shining in at least a couple months, but I've seen them both within the past year.
So which movie do you guys want to break down first? You want to talk about The Shining?
Let's start with The Shining.
Holy music. Without the music, this movie would be a joke. I watched this movie, I probably watched a third, I would say 2/3 of it, and then came back to it.
Okay.
It's a long-ass movie.
It is a long movie, but first of all, I think that, Jack Nicholson is a fucking great actor.
He's fantastic.
He's a crazy person.
He's in actually 2 of the movies. He's also in The Departed.
He's the crime boss in The Departed.
And he plays different characters, but plays them in the same way in both movies because he's just so good at being a complete psycho.
Oh, yeah.
But the thing about The Shining was that you expected it. Like, I knew when he's sitting in the job interview with this guy, the guy who runs the hotel, and he's telling him the story about, there was a guy who lived here and he killed his family, and then you have the kid seeing the 2 girls, and that the baby, by the way, the son. Have you guys ever seen The Sixth Sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is like the same exact character as this like weird little kid who's seeing dead people.
They're similar in a lot of aspects, yeah.
But the thing about The Shining, and also I mentioned this to Ray at work, is can you pull up, Ray, the actress's name who plays Jack Nicholson's wife in that movie?
I can try to.
Because the whole time I'm sitting there going, is she hot? Like in the beginning of the movie, I'm like, this girl is very unique looking. And by the end of the movie, I was in love with her. She like grew
She has
on
those
me.
wild eyes, man.
She has the wild eyes and the big gums and those big teeth. But it was a lot of fun to watch that movie. I really did enjoy it. I thought that going into it, I thought, oh God, here we go. It's going to be a ghost story of some guy, and that's why I expected it when he's sitting down, like I just spoke about. When he's sitting in the job interview, you expected how the movie was going to go, where you're going to see all these ghosts, and Jack Nicholson's going to kind of replay the story of this dead dude. But one of the biggest plot faults in that movie, and I don't know if you guys can remember the specific scene. There's a few scenes in that movie I have questions about, but the first one is when his wife locks Jack Nicholson in the dry storage.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember this scene?
Yes.
Where she pushes him down the stairs, knocks him out, and then carries him or drags him into the dry storage and locks the door.
Mm.
Who the fuck let him out of the dry storage? Because he's speaking to a ghost. He's speaking to the guy who killed his family. He's now a ghost butler, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is he the one that let him out?
I think that he just breaks out on his own.
He couldn't, though. It's a bolt lock, and he's injured.
I don't remember exactly the scene, but he's on a psycho murder rampage, so he might have found another way out. There might have been a second exit. I can't really remember the scene that well.
Also, another scene in that movie that...
Or doesn't the other guy who's in the hotel, doesn't he come in and then he hits him with the axe, or is that a different scene?
You talk about the black guy?
Yeah.
The black guy comes in later on, but Jack Nicholson is already out of the dry storage by that point.
Doesn't he kill him Doesn't he kill him in the dry storage?
No, he kills him in the foyer of the hotel.
Oh, I could have sworn.
Right, yeah.
Because he's walking into the hotel and Jack Nicholson is standing behind a pillar with the axe and sneaks up on him.
I can't remember now.
But
That's so weird.
another part of that movie that was so fucking weird was the guy in the bear suit
blowing
a dude out of nowhere? Is that like comedic relief? What is up with that?
Well, I think a big thing to really take into consideration, especially like I think it's really interesting that we actually picked two movies that have the same actor as one of the main actors, but have different directors. Stanley Kubrick is the director of The Shining, and Martin Scorsese directs The Departed. But anyways, with Stanley Kubrick, one of his big like points in his directing, one of his main concepts is he doesn't really, like, he obviously is trying to tell a good story, but his most important thing is he wants you to be able to feel an emotion in a scene. Like, he thinks that the conveying of an emotion in a scene is more important than exposition of a story. So, for instance, with that bear scene, when the guy is getting a blowjob from the guy in the bear suit in the hotel room, the whole idea of that scene is to like confuse you and kind of like disgust you.
Yeah,
and that's kind of what it does. It doesn't make any sense in terms of exposition.
It made me laugh. In a very heated, tense scene in the movie, there's a guy getting blown in a bear suit.
But just you have to think about it, like the time that this movie was made. What was it, the 70s?
Yeah, it was made in the late 70s.
And like just like the pure like ridiculousness of
it's not meant to like scare you, but it definitely like
it's supposed to confuse you. Yeah, you're like, what the fuck is going on in this
exactly
movie?
What I said.
And you can see that you can see a lot of that in other scenes in that movie. Like, for instance, I remember a big one is the the camera's slowly zooming in on Jack Nicholson's face. It's like early in the movie, I think, and the music's getting very, very intense. It's like going crazy and crazy and crazy, and then the music like hits a crescendo, and it's just a black screen, and it just says Tuesday. You remember that?
Yes.
And it kind of it gives you like a little jump. It's like kind of scary. Nothing scary is happening. It's just a zoom in, music, and then the cut. But just the way that the whole idea is to scare you, even though nothing is actually happening.
The whole movie is just like a psychological thriller, so it's playing on your emotions in a way. When that scene's playing, where the music is just building up, you're waiting for something to happen, and like then nothing happens.
The other thing that confused me too is Jack Nicholson in the movie gets drunk, but there's no booze in the place.
Isn't there booze in the bar?
No, they remove all the booze from the bar. They make that clear in the opening scene when they're cleaning up the hotel and there's still workers there. They said that it's cheaper for insurance if they clear all the booze out. But when the ghosts are having their party, there's booze at the bar, and that's when Jack Nicholson drinks. But in reality, the bar's empty.
Mm-hmm.
So how is Jack Nicholson drinking?
Well, remember at the end of the movie when they show the picture of like he is that guy?
Yes.
He's like reliving those experiences. So like he's like living like this weird like alternate world at the same time.
It's almost like he's crossing into the multiverse.
Yeah, exactly. So like he's getting drunk in like the past, but he's also like living in the future. So it's like this weird.
Yeah, like the spirits in the hotel are like what's influencing him, and it's it's affecting how he feels.
Honestly, I thought when I turned it off, I did go, "What the fuck did I just watch? Like, this is ridiculous." If I went to the movie theater, I paid $15 for that movie, I'd probably be a little pissed off.
Well, for back in the 70s, this movie was crazy. I mean, like, with the technology that we have now and all the different movie effects and, like, just the way movies are nowadays.
There's definitely, like, a lot of gratuitous stuff in the movie, and it's definitely trying to scare you. It is a scary story. But, yeah, no, like, going back onto the point, I think that this really is a good way. This is a good look at Stanley Kubrick as a director because it really hits on a couple different things. First of all, it's an adaptation of a Stephen King book, so it's not an original by him. There's a lot of modifications from the book. So you see how they use that plot, and like really his big thing is like I was saying, like he's all about creating the feeling of an emotion in a scene, and you see that in his other movies like 2001: A Space Odyssey does a lot of similar things. And I think this movie's a really good fusion because in 2001, which is it may be based off a book or not, but I'm pretty sure it's more of an original screenplay. He goes a lot further with the whole like using music and using camera angles to create feelings and create emotion in the scenes. Whereas this one, there's a lot more exposition and there's a lot more storytelling versus 2001. He wanted to
keep the feel of the book, the original Stephen King piece more. Like that was more important to him than portraying like his own view of what's happening.
So what do you guys think of the movie in general? Out of 5 stars, Ray, what do you give The Shining?
I would probably give it 4 out of 5 stars. I think it's...
Why is it not 5 stars?
It's kind of hard to give any movie 5 stars, really. I just think that maybe it's not a movie for everybody. I guess, which doesn't necessarily make it not 5 stars.
The only thing that I think they could have done better is the fucking kid when he's acting as his imaginary friend.
Mm-hmm.
Really, all he does is wag his finger and do a dumb voice. Yeah. And I'm sitting there going like,
red rum.
Yeah, red rum. Yeah. Jesse, would you give The Shining 4 out of 5 stars?
I like the movie a lot. Like those psychological thriller movies, they're not like my type of movie. I'd give it like around 4 out of 5 stars. Same thing. It's a classic, man. Everyone needs to see that movie, at least once.
I think the movie was too long.
It was a very long movie. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of scenes that could have been cut out.
But that's like how the Stephen King movies usually are, because the books are 1,200, 1,500 pages long. So there's a lot of stuff that needs to get put into that movie that they only have a certain amount of time for.
I bet you if they made The Shining today, that movie would have been an hour and 15 minutes long.
It just speaks to the time period that we live in. People don't have the attention spans anymore.
I guess you're right. Yeah, I lost myself in Tinder a few times in that movie, But I would give it 3 out of 5 stars. I think it was a well put together movie.
It was a passable movie.
And, you got to look at it from the perspective of this movie's 40 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very, very old movie.
So, in my 2017 brain, I'm thinking, this is shitty quality. Like the motion of scenes from scene to scene sometimes gets a little sketchy. And like the colors on the walls got like they became like 6 or 7 black squares.
That was 100% the movie.
But it wasn't. But it didn't. But it didn't affect the other 86% of my screen.
That happens with blacks a lot in streaming, just because of the way that the streaming compression works.
Other than that, 3 out of 5 stars. I think it was a well put together movie.
I gotta say, out of all the movies that we picked, I would have thought that this would have been your least favorite movie, just because of how old it was. You don't really watch any old movies, you said.
Well, it definitely wasn't my least favorite movie, and that's a good way to get into that. So why don't we talk about The Departed?
Okay.
What do you guys think of The Departed? Ray, tell me about it. You said it's actually one of your favorite movies, right?
Yeah, I really like The Departed. The Departed is the whole plot is it's about a Irish mob boss in Boston who recruits people at a young age, and one of the people he recruits becomes a police officer, and he becomes a sergeant in the special investigation unit in the Massachusetts State Police. And the special investigation unit is the organized crime unit, so he's tasked with investigating the person that he works for. And then at the same time, one of the other members of the state Massachusetts State Academy, Police Academy, he gets pulled out of the academy and becomes an undercover cop to infiltrate the Irish mob. So it's like a whole cat and mouse, trying to find the rat on both sides. It's a really, really great story. But I really enjoy it. I think first of all, it's a remake or a reimagining of a foreign film called Infernal Affairs, which is a Chinese movie. But it's just a really, really good thriller. It's a really good crime movie. I think the acting's really good. The scenes are really good. It's a compelling story.
Jesse?
So I like this movie a lot, and again, I haven't seen this movie in a long time. I didn't do my homework. I should have done it. But
shocking.
Yeah, right. But I feel the same way. What Ray said. I love all the actors in this movie. Like you said, Jack Nicholson's in it. Leonardo DiCaprio, Mark Wahlberg. But I thought the acting was great, and it's a great psychological thriller, I guess you could say. It's not more of just a thriller.
It's like a crime drama, I guess.
Yeah,
but
crime drama.
Thriller's not the right word. It's an exciting movie.
Exactly, yeah.
I have a lot of thoughts about this movie.
Okay.
Once again, I watched it in 2 parts. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes long.
Yeah, it's another long one.
This movie is my problem with movies.
What's that?
It sums it up perfectly. Is that in this movie, there are 2 storylines happening simultaneously. The Departed could have been 2 movies. Matt Damon's part and Leonardo DiCaprio's part, right? They could have been 2 separate movies that could have functioned completely on their own. But I'm watching this movie. I'm following both scenes. I'm trying to keep up, and I felt like I was falling behind. I felt like throughout the movie, I can't pay attention to the current scene because I'm still trying to figure out where we are. And I'm trying to figure out my place in the movie. Mm-hmm. And I felt like it was a mental exercise to the point of exhaustion trying to follow the plot of this movie. And I felt that the way they went from scene to scene and storyline to storyline was completely just terrible. And I felt that they needed to go with... You ever see the movie Beyond the Pines?
No.
Beyond the Pines is very similar to The Departed in that it's two different stories following two guys that their lives interject in different ways, and then they meet up at the end. It's very similar in that fact. But the way they tell the story is, here's one, here's the other. Mm-hmm. Now they meet. Simultaneously telling these two stories fucking lost me. It fucking lost me, and it took away from the value of this movie because I could see that this movie had a lot of potential. It really did. It's a good storyline. It shows that, you know, these police departments were so fucked up and that there are a lot of dirty cops. And it told a really good, interesting story. And I think that The Departed would have been a great Netflix series, you know, if they broke it down into 10, 12, 13 episodes. But to tell two stories simultaneously in 2 hours and 40 minutes fucking lost me.
So let me ask you, what would you do differently if you were filming that movie? How would you make it a more enjoyable movie for you?
I would have shot one guy's scene, showed that for 45 minutes, and then I would have brought in the other guy, and showed that for 45 minutes, and then brought them together at the end.
Okay. I personally think it's a really well done rendition of the two different stories colliding with each other because they're not really two different stories. You know, they're both integral. Everything that they do intertwines throughout the entire movie. Like characters that one, you know, in the beginning when Leonardo DiCaprio character Bill Costigan.
We can just use their actors' names.
Well, when Leonardo DiCaprio, he's in the beginning, he meets the detective, the black detective that later on goes into Sergeant Sullivan, Matt Damon's character's squad later on in the movie. So like they meet characters like that, and also like, you know, he's working for the same unit that Leonardo DiCaprio is working for. They're just in different departments, and they both report to the same people. In both ways, Matt Damon's reporting to Jack Nicholson's character, who's the mob boss, Frank Costello, and he's also reporting to Martin Sheen and Mark Wahlberg, whereas, you know, Leonardo DiCaprio is doing the same thing. He works for Jack Nicholson, but he's also talking to Martin Sheen and Mark Wahlberg as the cops. But I think, you know, they integrate really well, and it's a really fun, you know, it's an interesting movie because the entire time they're both trying to catch each other.
Two other bones I have to pick with this movie. One would be they don't really wrap up at the end well that Leonardo DiCaprio is banging Matt Damon's girlfriend. They hinted that, like, she figures out that, holy shit, these guys know each other and they're working together. Leonardo DiCaprio and Matt Damon never find out that plot in the movie. They never find out that they're banging the same girl. And that, when the movie ended, I was like, wait, they're not going to clear that up? They're not going to show a scene where they don't try to punch each other because they figure out they're banging the same chick?
Yeah, I think that was more of like a secondary plot line, which I understand. I think they should have wrapped that up a little bit better because they didn't at all. I understand your gripe with that.
She's a great actress. She's in one of my favorite movies. Her name is, she's a Polish or Ukrainian actress. Her name is like, I can't remember her name. If you want to look it up, you can.
I'll pull it up.
She's in a movie called Up in the Air, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, that's the one with...
it's with her and Anna Kendrick and George Clooney.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Was it Vera Farmiga?
Yeah, that's her, yeah. She is so hot in this movie, too.
What is she in? Oh, man. Oh, she's the mom in Bates Motel.
I don't know what that is.
You never
it's
seen
a
that?
TV series based off of Psycho, the old movie, which is also a Stanley Kubrick movie. But what I wanted to go back on is the point of the psychologist girlfriend in the center there. Uh-huh. I think that's another good plot point in the movie because it kind of conveys that whole, like, they're both like always around the corner from each other, you know.
Also, Leonardo DiCaprio, there's a scene where he hands her an envelope and he says, "Don't open this until I tell you to."
Yeah.
Or I think it's unless he dies or something. We never find out what's in that envelope.
That envelope is the CD.
No, doesn't she mail that to him? No, he sends.
No,
he sends Matt Damon that CD.
What?
And she opens it.
Mm-hmm.
She puts that letter. She feels it. She puts the letter in the drawer. We never see it again.
I don't remember what's in the letter.
Because they never tell you.
I'm not sure. It might have been all the information from it.
My third gripe with this movie is the fucking actors doing these bullshit Boston accents. Alec Baldwin is from Massapequa. And this guy goes from Long Island to Boston, back to Long Island to Boston, back to Long Island.
Mark Wahlberg got it down pretty well.
Because he's from Boston.
He's from Boston, yeah. Yeah.
You could tell that they gave all the people who worked in that movie, like, they gave them dialect classes to, like, learn a Boston accent. They probably brought somebody in there to, like, allow them to, drop their R's and, left my khakis in my khakis kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
But it was very overdone. And you didn't necessarily have to give these people Boston accents or Massachusetts accents to strengthen the movie. I think that the only people that would have noticed that are people that live in Massachusetts. Like, Alec Baldwin sounds ridiculous in that movie.
It's a movie in Boston. You have to have people with Boston accents. If this was a movie based in New York and it was just a bunch of New York cops, they were going to be talking like they're from, Brooklyn or like.
Well, there's a scene in that movie where, what is her name, the actress's name?
Vera Fremmings or whatever her name is.
There's a scene right at the end of the movie where Matt Damon catches her listening to the tapes, and she's there with the headphones on.
Yeah.
And she takes the headphones off, and she runs in her room. And I can't remember exactly what she says. I wish we had, like, a TV so we could pull up the scene where she completely speaks, and it sounds like a British accent. Like, I think it's definitely like an error where she did not use. I think she might have like a British accent in real life. She definitely had like a very weird sounding version of her sentence. It was not a Boston accent. It was like some European thing going on. Definitely. That's why I Googled her and I found out that she is actually Ukrainian, because I was like, there's no way this girl is completely American the way she just said that sentence. And it was. She turned her back and walked to the door, and so you couldn't read her lips when she said it, but when I heard it, it definitely jumped out at me. I was like, whoa. Like, they tried really hard to make these people talk a certain way, and although they had an all-star cast, some of the actors and actresses on the movie didn't do a great job of that.
Yeah, like they sacrificed like the quality of the movie for, what they thought would be quality for like an attempted authenticity, and that is where the movie kind of lost me a little bit, because I'm trying to follow these plots, and as I'm trying to follow the plots, Alec Baldwin is pretending that he's from Southie, and I'm going, what the fuck is going on right now? But the movie definitely caught up at the end. I was blown away when Leonardo DiCaprio catches a bullet in the elevator.
Yeah, right.
I was like, whoa.
That's a great. The ending for that's a great. Just shock.
Also, the greatest I got out of my couch like the fucking Canadians scored a goal in overtime. I was like, yeah, when Captain, what's the guy? I thought it was Captain McQueen, but you told me
it's
just
like
before.
Captain Quinnen.
Quinnen, yeah.
Quinnen. He knows he's fucked.
Oh, yeah.
He's
in the elevator.
He's in the building.
Lobby.
Yeah, he's in the elevator lobby, right? He does the cross on his body, and he takes the holster. He takes his pistol out of the holster. Puts a cigarette in his mouth. The elevator door's open. He goes, "You guys got a light?" And then they throw him off the roof.
Yeah, that's a great scene.
A lot of silencers in that movie. And the thing about movie silencers, which are so funny, is that a gun with a silencer on it is still loud as fuck.
Yeah, man. The only reason why a silencer's on a gun is so it doesn't hurt the user's ears. Like, it's still loud as fuck.
There's a scene at the end of that movie, too, where when Jack Nicholson's character dies, Matt Damon shoots him like once or twice. First of all, Matt Damon gets shot by Jack Nicholson's character, and the bullet bounces off his bulletproof vest, which doesn't happen in real life.
Yeah.
And then, so he shoots Jack Nicholson, right? Jack Nicholson falls down, and then Jack Nicholson shoots him again. This guy goes down shooting, right? So Matt Damon unloads on him. Nobody hears anything. No cops respond. And then after that, Matt Damon goes, "I got him," and all the cops come and run to him. Like, no one heard 11 gunshots.
To be fair, there was a giant firefight going on the entire time.
But it's completely quiet. And there's cops, like, in the next building over, in shouting distance of Matt Damon. They hear an exchange of gunfire. No one responds. Matt Damon goes, "I got him." And then they all run over. So what do you guys think of The Departed as a movie as a whole, Ray? 4 stars, 5 stars. I know it's one of your favorite movies. You giving it 5 stars?
I would probably give it 5 stars. Yeah, I really like it. I think it's a great story. I think that there's a lot of great cinematography, a lot of great editing, a lot of great just the way that they tell the story and the plot lines that they have. I think everything really goes together well, and it's just like a very well put together movie.
Jesse?
I like the movie a lot too. I'm kind of piggybacking on Ray with this one. I haven't seen the movie like relatively recently, so I like all the scenes kind of get lost on me. But Matt Damon, he can be a little ridiculous sometimes. But and so is Mark Wahlberg. He's a little ridiculous.
His character in that movie's ridiculous.
Yeah, but I mean the movie's great. It tells a great story. I see where you get a little hung up on like the whole 2 stories intertwining a little bit, but
that's the movie.
That's the movie. I like those types of movies because like it shows how it all gets put together at the end. I like it. I think it's an awesome way to tell a story.
I think this movie would have been great if it was 2 movies. If it was 1 movie about Leonardo DiCaprio and it was 1 movie about Matt Damon. I also think this would have been really great if it was like a 12-part series.
Yeah, I like what you said about that, like having it be like a Netflix series.
Yeah, I'm giving it 2 stars. I think that it was hard to follow. I think that the whole implementation of these Boston accents on people that are from different parts of the world was instituted poorly. I don't think the actors did a necessarily good job of speaking like they're all from Massachusetts, except Mark Wahlberg, because that's where he's from. It was a good balance of plot and violence. It wasn't too bloody. It wasn't too gory. But when you don't have a lot of that stuff, it really brings value to those scenes in general.
Yeah.
Like when you don't have a lot of blood, when Leonardo DiCaprio takes a bullet, that scene really gets to you, because you're like, holy fuck.
That's the whole thing is like the violence is just like any other thing that you see in the movie. It's a tool to, it's to show you that these gangsters they're monsters. They're awful people.
Let's talk about Goodfellas. Ray, your thoughts on Goodfellas as a whole?
I think that Goodfellas is a really great mafia film. I think it's like it's basically the movie that made mafia films like big again, because you had The Godfather, which came out in the 70s, which kind of like started that genre, and this is like a really fresh take on that entire story, because it's a similar thing. Like with The Godfather, it's an epic about the beginning of.
I've never seen The Godfather.
Well, it's a similar story in that the main plot of the movie is basically about a character who is innocent, who doesn't want anything to do with the mafia or isn't involved in the mafia necessarily, and how he gets brought into it and how it changes him and how it consumes his life and eventually ruins it. And Goodfellas is like that as well, where you start with the kid and how he gets involved and how he goes up and then how it completely destroys him at the end. But Goodfellas is doing it like really, really fresh. It's a lot of comedy, a lot of violence. Like it's a really smart movie, whereas The Godfather is a lot more about the dramatic.
Yeah, and there's like you don't wait for anything in Goodfellas. Like the opening scene in that movie is Ray Liotta going, ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to be a gangster. And then they open up the hood of the car, the trunk of the car, and Joe Pesci takes a kitchen knife and stabs the shit out of some dude that's tied up in the back of it. It's just 0 to 100. There's, you know what you're getting into as soon as you start this movie.
I like that you brought up Ray Liotta, because Ray and I were talking about this when we were having coffee before we started recording. He was completely miscasted in this movie. That is my one big bone to pick with this movie, is that Ray Liotta should not have played Henry Hill. I know who Henry Hill is. Henry Hill is a repeat guest on the Howard Stern show.
Is he really?
So yeah, he's a real dude. Like he's a real guy.
Yeah,
he doesn't
based off
look
of a true story.
Anything like Ray Liotta. Henry Hill was gay. At the end of his life, he was with men, and Ray Liotta. We were speaking about this as in particular. There's a scene, I would say about a quarter of the way through the movie, where Ray Liotta's wife. At the time, they're just boyfriend and girlfriend. They're sitting in a car, a convertible, making out, and Ray Liotta is supposed to be 21. This guy is in his 40s when this movie's being filmed, and the whole time he's supposed to be a kid, and you're supposed to watch him aging through life.
Yeah, and he stays
he stays
age,
45 the whole movie.
They changed his hair color a little bit from the beginning to the end.
And there's a scene, and I don't know how long this movie took to be filmed. But there's a scene where the camera's right over Ray Liotta's head, and he's laying in bed, and he's got a big double chin. But a half hour ago, this guy's completely ripped. So I don't know if he put on weight while the movie was being filmed. I don't know how long it took this movie to be filmed, but Ray Liotta just, first of all, his laughing in that movie
it's hilarious.
Fucking ridiculous.
That's why it's fun. It's funny.
Dude, that scene when Joe Pesci, they're in the club together and he's telling the joke and
why am I funny?
Yeah, yeah. And then
that's a great scene.
That's an awesome scene, and that was not in the script at all. Joe Pesci just did that, and everyone just kind of followed along, and everyone calms down, and Ray Liotta starts laughing again. That stupid fucking laugh that he has, where like his face goes back and he starts like screaming. It's so funny. I thought he's a great actor in this movie.
I'm watching him going, this fucking guy, Ray Liotta, the actor, is sitting in this scene going, this scene is all about Joe Pesci. How do I make it about me? Why don't I laugh like a fucking buffoon?
Well, that's the whole thing of the movie is that they're all mobsters, so they're all psychos and they're all narcissists. And on top of that, like the whole theme of the movie and the whole like vibe of it is that it's kind of larger than life, you know.
Over half of the movie, it's basically like glorifying like the mafia, like how cool it is to be in the mafia, like. You know, you have money, you have power, you're a cool guy. When you walk into a nightclub, you're giving people $100 bills just to walk through the door. Everyone, like, loves you. But then it turns, and at the end of the movie, you see how, like, this lifestyle ruins people. Like, you know, the entire gang at the end of the movie gets...
They all get arrested.
Yeah, they all get arrested, and, like...
Or they're dead.
Or they're dead, yeah. Joe Pesci gets shot in the head, you know? Like, yeah, that whole movie, like, it really portrays how... In the beginning of it, at least, like how Ray Liotta's character always wanted to be a gangster. He glorified that lifestyle because everyone that he saw that was a gangster was the coolest guy in the world. You know, they're all driving Cadillacs. They all have money, smoking big cigars. But then you get into the nitty-gritty of it, and then you realize, like, this can't last. Like, everyone that's in this lifestyle, it has to come to an end sometime, you know?
This is a whole nother broad concept. But just to mention it, I don't want to get into it at all. I don't want to speak about gentrification in Brooklyn because we can talk about this for hours. Very sensitive topic. But beginning of the movie, 1955, East New York. White guys, top hats, playing cards, fucking around, old school Italians. All the African Americans come in, right? All the, Haitians and people from Guyana and Trinidad, Tobago, all these people now live there, right? And now people argue that that culture of Brooklyn is being destroyed by young white people moving into Brooklyn. And that is the problem with gentrification, is that it's quote-unquote destroying the culture. But the way Goodfellas makes it is that Brooklyn, 60 years ago, was filled with white people and filled with Italian culture.
Well, it was Little Italy back then, you know?
And so the argument of gentrification, what Goodfellas made me realize about gentrification is that it's even more bullshit than I thought of before I watched the movie. Because people make it seem like the African and West Indian culture has been in Brooklyn since the fucking Roman Empire, and it hasn't even been there for 50 years.
No. They all moved into Brooklyn around like the 70s, right? The 60s, 70s, I guess?
I'm not sure. I don't know when that movement of different types of cultures came to Brooklyn, but now people make it seem like it is the root of Brooklyn is this West Indian, African American, like multicultural universe, and that is what Brooklyn has always been. And it wasn't.
Well, I mean, it's always been like a multicultural environment. It's just like, the culture changes and stuff like that. Originally when the Italians and the Irish came to America and they lived in places like Brooklyn and Queens, they were discriminated against and they were considered like the lower class people and they were looked down upon. And then as they gained notoriety and as they gained respect and prominence and power, it just changed to another, it continued on. It changed to another race of people.
There's one black guy played by Samuel L. Jackson in that movie. And that's it. There's no other black people in Goodfellas.
Yeah, they're the mafia. They don't really associate with people that are of different, they really don't associate with people that aren't Italian.
It is so funny when they say, They go, Samuel L. Jackson's character, and I wonder if this is true.
Mm-hmm.
They say that Samuel L. Jackson's character gets stoned, forgets to dump the truck, and they find it. That's why they kill him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that's true.
Like I said earlier, like this film, it's, you know, they bump everything up. It's like a larger-than-life thing. Like Ray Liotta's crazy laugh and the crazy violence and the narration.
You think they told him, hey, Ray, laugh like a fucking idiot in this scene?
Probably.
Or did he do that on his own?
I think that he was probably directed to do that. But just the whole point is, you know, everything is like crazy like that. Like
Yeah, it's
the whole,
Hollywood, man.
You know,
You can't
like-
have a full, true story when you're depicting like a Hollywood movie like that, you know? It has to be a little, all the bells and whistles
It's a
need
drama.
to be on.
It has to
Yeah,
be
it's a
drama.
drama.
It's not even that
Exactly.
necessarily. It's just like, for instance, like going back to The Godfather, because it's another mafia story. The Godfather is a very serious movie, and like a lot of the filmmaking techniques and the acting and the directing is all towards making it a more serious movie and to get you more involved. Whereas with Goodfellas, I feel like a lot of the acting, the directing, and all that stuff, you know, it doesn't take itself too seriously. Like it can crack some jokes. It's tongue in cheek. You know, they're cracking wise all the time. Whereas like if you go back to that older style, it's a dramatic movie. Like it's made to be very serious. There's not a lot of joking in The Godfather. There's some funny scenes, but like that's not common. Like meanwhile in like Goodfellas, like every 5 minutes there's a funny joke happening or there's a funny scene.
Your thoughts on the movie, Ray?
I think it's a really, really great mafia movie. I think it really exemplifies the genre and kind of the direction that it went in. Because, you know, you go back to the old school movies and they're a lot more serious. They take themselves a lot more seriously. They're really, I hate to keep bringing it back to The Godfather, but it's the same thing. Like they show it as like this very, you know, this is a huge thing. It's a huge cultural thing, and it's this huge thing of honor. And it's huge, it's big, and it's important, and it's dramatic, and it's tragic. Whereas Goodfellas, it's like, this is ridiculous. Like they're basically like making fun of the mafia. The
Yeah,
whole
exactly.
Time, you know what I mean?
Jesse?
When I love this movie. This is like one of my favorite movies of all time, and like I love the comedy relief from it, and just the storytelling. I love all the actors. Robert De Niro is awesome in it, and
The food.
Always
with the
Italians
peppers.
with the food. Yeah,
There's a scene in that movie where Ray Liotta gets on the phone, and the brother that's in a wheelchair.
yeah.
Like I don't remember the exact context, but there's a scene where it's a tense fucking scene, and Ray Liotta stops, pulls out his phone, dials it, and goes, "Are you stirring the sauce?"
Yeah, and
Stir the sauce.
See, that's the thing, is I think that we have a pretty good mix of movies here, because like The Shining is, you know, it's a very somber movie. It's very, you know, it's supposed to be scary and tense. And then The Departed definitely has a little more levity to it, and
It's got
there's
a little
some
bit of
funny,
both,
yeah, there's some funny stuff, but it's pretty serious. It's a tragic movie. And then Goodfellas is like it's a good time. You know, you're watching that movie and it's funny the whole time. Like you're rooting for these guys even though they're terrible people.
Yeah, like when the scene like when they all go to when the guys are in prison, Big Paulie's in prison, and it's like they call it the country club because like they go there and everyone's cooking steak. They have Paulie's like cutting up the garlic, and they have like he's like, oh, go talk to the guard, get us our lobsters.
He's
that
cutting the
just came in."
garlic with a razor blade.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
the razor blade. Yeah,
And then like Ray Liotta's narrating, and he's like the other guy, I forget the guy's name, but he's
Yeah,
like one of the other guys is like he always puts too much onions in the sauce.
Yeah.
And then Big Paulie's like, hey,
Easy on the onions.
Yeah.
easy on the onions. Yeah, stuff like that.
they're grabbing like
it's
the bottles
funny.
of wine and everything. Like,
It's like it's like kind of breaking the fourth wall. Like it's aware that it's a movie about this crazy, absurd lifestyle.
yeah,
and it really
they did it really well. I give this movie 5 stars, man.
I'm giving it 4 stars. I think this is definitely my favorite movie out of the 3. If I had to rank it, I would go Goodfellas, and then I would go The Shining, and then Departed at the bottom. But this movie was good. It was long.
But that's the thing with this movie. It's a long movie, but there's really no dull moments.
No,
in
it keeps
Like,
you engaged.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it really
exactly.
keeps you engaged.
My only bone to pick is that I think Ray Liotta was completely miscasted. I think that they could have found someone better to play.
I think you're the only person in the world that
Yeah.
thinks that.
Dude,
And
I
the
love
whole
his
time I'm
acting
thinking
in this
that.
movie was
I thought it was
great.
terrible. I really thought everybody did a great job. I thought Robert De Niro's great. I thought that Joe Pesci was great. But
I love
fucking
Ray
Liotta, man.
Lorraine Bracco is really great in that movie.
Yeah.
His wife,
Yeah.
she's really great.
How you doing? Can I get you some water? You thirsty? You thirsty? That's just like
Stereotypical Italian mom, yeah.
Italian hospitality, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Really, that's my only bone to pick with this movie. I think Ray Liotta could have been played, or Henry Hill rather, could have been played by someone completely different.
Well, here's the thing,
I think even Joe Pesci could have played Henry Hill better. Because once you see Henry Hill in real life, you realize he's nothing like Ray Liotta.
Yeah, but
he's a tiny, scrawny little ugly dude.
You have to think about it like this is a movie.
I know.
And you can't like take everything from the true story. Like
I know.
It's made to be entertaining first, and it's interesting that it's a true story second.
Yeah.
So why don't we answer the question that you asked me? Why don't we answer the question that you asked me in the beginning? Is have my opinions on movies changed? The answer is yes. Going into this, first of all, I haven't sat down and watched a movie in fucking forever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Especially finding a movie, saying this specific movie I want to watch. Like not just searching through the channels, finding someone halfway
deliberately
through
picking
and finishing
a movie.
it. Yeah, going from start to finish. I think that Goodfellas was a really interesting way to see how Brooklyn and Queens and New York in general just looked in the 50s. I remember you speaking about how movies, you being Ray, provides a good historical context of how things just looked aesthetically at the time.
Yeah.
Goodfellas does a really good job doing that.
It's a culture piece too,
Yeah, and I think that, maybe there is some value in that. That there is some historical perspective value in old movies, and that I shouldn't just dismiss a movie because it's old.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this 2-part podcast has taught me, is that just because a movie was made in 1990 doesn't mean it's shit.
Yeah.
And, watching Goodfellas and, watching The Departed and watching The Shining, these movies, The Departed's what, 2004, I think?
2000, yeah, it's like 2005 or 2006,
early 2000s.
I want to
so
say.
no movie that I watched was made in the past 10 years.
Yeah, I like
Yes.
that we did that too. We picked movies that were a little older,
Which definitely taught me something.
Yeah.
It taught me something. Do I think that movies are necessarily more valuable? I think it depends on the movie.
I think that's definitely true.
Yeah.
I think that, Rob last time said that, there's a lot of shit and you got to pick out the shit when it comes
Absolutely.
to movies.
Like, listen, you watch Transformers 1 through 8, whatever they're on now. It's not going to have the same value to you than watching a piece like Goodfellas, where you can see what, like you guys were talking about before, you can see what Brooklyn and Queens were like back in the 70s, and you have an idea of what the mafia was doing back then, and how the Italian mob was working, instead of seeing
Shia
LaBeouf and Megan Fox fighting robots,
making out inside of a Camaro that has its own mind.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like food.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can eat at McDonald's, or you can eat at a fancy restaurant.
Exactly right. As you guys know, I'm very critical.
Absolutely.
And, movies in particular, there's a lot to criticize. You got 2.5 hours of content.
Oh, yeah.
And every single movie, you could find something to pick at. The Departed, trash. Okay? I wouldn't watch it again. The Shining was okay. Would I watch it again? Maybe. I would definitely watch Goodfellas again.
Yeah.
And I think watching Goodfellas, I want to see The Godfather now.
I just want to say, I think it's very interesting that your favorite movie was Goodfellas and your least favorite movie was The Departed, because they're both directed by the same director. They're both directed by Martin Scorsese.
And you see similar styles in both movies.
Definitely.
But Goodfellas focuses on one plot.
Yeah.
It's one story. It's Ray Liotta.
Mm-hmm.
Departed focuses on 2.
The Departed is definitely a lot more. It's a more complex movie, and it's a lot more ambitious. Whereas I think Goodfellas, another great thing, is going back to the kind of the value as a historical context, is you could watch that movie and have never even heard the word mafia before, and by the end of the movie you'll have a good understanding as to how the mafia works and what it is and what it meant to people.
All right. Well, thank you, boys, for doing this. This was great.
Absolutely. Anytime.
I definitely learned something. I got something out of this.
It's been a pleasure.
I'm not going to turn off a movie just because it's old.
Yeah, let's hope you start watching a little bit more movies.
Maybe I'll go to the movies with you guys.
Absolutely.
I think you should definitely expand the genres that you watch too. I think I recommended Annie Hall too. I don't know if we put that down on the list.
No.
Yeah.
But either way, you had 2 crime dramas, then you had a thriller. And I think that sci-fi is definitely a genre that you should look at, because sci-fi is more of a the thing with sci-fi is it's all about looking at literally the future, what's happening and how does this affect the future going forward, and how does this reflect upon society. And then you should watch. I mean, you said that you like romantic comedies and stuff like that.
I love them.
Yeah, and that's like another. It's a genre that definitely gets beat up a lot, just like kind of like the horror movie and the slasher film. But there's definitely a lot of quality there, and there's a lot of things to be seen and learned.
All right. Well, for Ray Rivera and Jesse Wozniak,
Thanks
I'm
for
Adam
having us.
Zaki. This was Adam Hates Movies. I think this went well. Nice 2-part series. Definitely learned something and had some value. So thank you very much.
Thanks
boys.
for
I
having
appreciate
us.
it.
Anytime, man.